Alright, everybody. So, today I'm going to be talking about Blue-White Ephemerate, a deck that I've been working on for quite some time now. I've had some really good success with the deck so far. About 3 top 8s with it, and 2 of them have been wins so far, so I think this deck definitely is solid and should be played more. So I'm gonna make a guide and over what cards you should play and what you could play and how to build it. The deck has a lot of cards you could play. It's really up to you. It's mostly personal preference, to be honest. A lot of the choices are up to your play style. So I'm gonna get straight into it, and we're gonna start off with the main card, Ephemerate. So you exile a creature you control, then return it back to the battlefield. Has rebound, so cast it during your upkeep for free. So the idea is you play Ephemerate on one of your value creatures. This could be like Stonehorn, Archaeomancer, Muldrifter, Seagate Oracle, and you could either draw a bunch of cards, bounce a bunch of dudes, lock your opponent out of combat, lock them out of everything, or just value mostly. So, the list that I recently have won with has been playing 4 Ephemerate, 4 Drifter, 3 Mancer, 4 Seagate Oracle, and 1 Aether Snipe. So, the cool thing about Drifter and Aether Snipe is that you can evoke them and then Ephemerate it so they don't leave the battlefield, and their ability happens again. So, for example, Muldrifter turns into a 4 mana draw 6, Aether Snipe turns into a 4 mana bounce 3 things. So, a lot of cool things you can do with Ephemerate. The lock cards the counterspells that I was using were Essence Guide, Prohibit, and 2 Counterspell. I like Counterspell just because it's a full-on Counterspell. Essence Scatter can't hit non-creature spells like Negate or other non-creatures, but it can only hit creatures. So if you have Ephemerate and Archaeomancer, and let's say they hit Defile or something, you can't counter it. So that's why I like Counterspell. But some people don't like Counterspell because 1, it doesn't get discounted by Sunscape Familiar, and 2, because it's double blue, which can be a pain. So I understand why some people don't like to play Counterspell, but I like playing it. So that's the main thing that I've been doing with Ephemerate. I also play 1 Ghostly Flicker for you can, if you have 2 Archaeomancer out and a snap, you can snap their board if you have a familiar. You can also just do it with value with Muldrifter, Aether Snipe, and Seagate Oracle, or lock them out with 2 Archaeomancers plus Flicker. So that's the cool things you can do with Flicker, but I might end up carrying it in the future because it's either really good or really bad a lot of the time. And we don't play Mystic Sanctuary, so we can't combo with it. It's mostly there just for value. So, let's go back to the possible cards you can play. So, the lands, I've been on 3 Chancery, 4 Tranquil Cove, 1 Evolving Wilds, and 3 Ash Barrens. I like Ash Barrens a lot because we usually have more than 1 land in hand, so we don't need 4 Fallen Wilds. And I like to have 1 just because Tranquil Cove's been good because, again, you have Counterspell, and you really want to have a lot of white and a lot of blue because you want to be casting multiple Ephemerates, casting Godforce Lethals and Familiars, while casting all these other double blue cards. So that's the land situation I've been on. I've been on 2 plains, the rest are islands. It's been pretty solid. A lot of times you do have to mulligan because you don't have lands, but I think 21's fine because you don't really want to flood out a lot. Back to cards. So, cantrip package. Ponder, Preordain, Brainstorm. I know Birdman or Entropy has been playing Brainstorm and Ponder and Preordain, so he plays 10 cantrips. But I'm not a big fan of cantrips in this show, mostly because it's all about drawing Ephemerate, and once you hit Ephemerate, you don't need cantrips for the rest of the game, mostly, since you can just draw so many cards, or just lock them out by that point. So, this list, or I guess my last two lists, I've been playing 2 Ponder 4 Preordain, but I think next turn I'm only going to be playing 4 Preordain. I like to have some amount of cantrips, but I don't like to have so many cantrips to where that's what I'm doing for the first 3 to 4 turns of the game. There's also Faithfuls. Some people like to play Faithful. I like to play it mostly because you need a way to survive the early game, and it's also really good sack fodder against like mono black control, where they have edicts and stuff. So I really like Faithful. You can also combo with it with Arcanamancer plus Flicker into Familiar. You go Flicker land plus Arcanamancer, and you gain 1 life each time you do that. Also, the Counterspell package, which I think a lot of people have trouble figuring out what counterspells they want to play, and this is one of the things I think you really get to choose what you want to do. Like I said before, I like to have counterspells, actual counterspells, but some people opt to not play them. So some people might go only prohibit, some people might go exclude and prohibit, some people might pick a spell, but I think you have options here. I like Essence Scatter because there are creatures that we can't really deal with. Negate's also good because it can protect your familiars or your other creatures while you cast Ephemerate. And Dispel's also good in general because they can counter other counter spells, or it just like counter spreads and such. But I think the worst one here is probably just Dispel, because it's more of a sideboard card than anything. But I myself like to play counter spells. Some people don't like to play it at all. So in the card draw slot, you have Compulsive Research and Deep Analysis. I don't like to play a whole lot of these. Before, I didn't even play any. I just went all out on the Ephemerate value train, which worked fine. But lately, I've played 2 Deep Analysis, because sometimes you just have like turn 2 Familiar into turn 3 Deep Analysis, and that just gets you way too ahead. By the time you do that, you're pretty much won the game. So I'm gonna have some amount of Deep Analysis. Some people like to play Compulsive, like I said before, because it's early. It's early card draw. You can always discard lands if you flood out. But I like Deep Analysis since it's mostly just a 4 mana draw, 4 cards, which is pretty solid. So let's talk about the ETB package, which is all of these cards right here. These 5. So, Stonehorn Dignitary. This is one of the cards that I like to skip on. Reason for this is because we have Faithful most of the time to survive the early game, but against things like Mono Green aggro and other super fast aggro decks, we are very, very weak to them because my bad. So we usually get punched, and we lose a lot of life in the early game while we try to set up our value train. And our value doesn't really matter because they just have such a clock on us that, by the time we've gone like Ephemerate Drifter, we've pretty much lost. So, I'm thinking I'm gonna start playing 2 Stonehorn Dignitaries main deck, just for that reason. And it's also really good against Boggles, which I've had a hard time against. So, there's also my favorite tech, Aether Snipe. So, Aether Snipe is just a snap on a stick, or boomerang, if you want to think about it like that. What a lot of people don't realize is it's a 4 mana, bounce 3 things, make a 4/4. That is just insane a lot of the time, which I think is almost on the same level as 4 mana draw 6 some of the time. Against Heroic and like Mono Black and those kinds of decks, it's just an automatic win. That's why I like Aether Snipe. I originally played 3, I cut down to 1, and I might not play any, but I like to have 1 now. Like, it feels wrong if I'm not playing one of them. We also have Seagate Oracle, which I think it kind of has to be a 4 of, because a lot of the times you could just use Ephemerate for like 1 mana draw 2, that's already fine enough. It's like a pseudo sexual recall, if you think about it like that. So I like to have 4 sea gates and 4 Mold Drifter because it's just card draw. And card draw is what lets us win a lot of the time. And the last card is Archaeomancer. I think you want to play at least 2. You can also play Mnemonic Wall, but I think Archaeomancer is much better just because it's 1 less. So Archaeomancer has to be at least a 2 of, because 1, it can lock out with Ephemerate, and 2, it's really good with Flicker. Like, you always want to have 1 in the game. By the time you cast Archaeomancer with Ephemerate, you've pretty much won the game. So that's what I like about Archaeomancer. So that's pretty much all the cards that you can play. Another one that's interesting is Sage's Road Denizen, which I've been playing in the sideboard. So you might be asking why? Why do you play in the sideboard? Main reason I play in the sideboard is because of like decks like Boros Monarch, where they have stuff like Core Skyfisher and all these other flyers that you can't win with combat damage. So how are you gonna win? You can win with decking them with like compulsive research or deep analysis, but that's very risky. So I like to bring in Sage's Road Denizen, as it's a way that you can combo really fast with Archaeomancer and Flicker, and it's just a way to end the game very fast when those games take very long. So sideboard options, these are interesting ones that you could choose from. So Stoneheart Dignitary, I like to play at least 2. Depends on your meta, of course, but you always want 2, I think. But if you play like none main deck and your meta is hyper aggro, you might want to be playing 4. Stormbound Geist is there for like the flying decks like Delver and such. I know Birdman has been playing 2 in his sideboard, I believe. So it might be alright there, but I like to play Gutshot instead. I think Gutshot is much better because there's a lot of times where you play like turn 2 Faithful into Cantrip, and they might just have like Spellstutter Sprite, which is what Gutshot does, and it takes care of that really easily, and it's free. There's also Exclude. Some people like to play Exclude. I played 1 in the sideboard for a bit. I ended up cutting it because I thought it was mediocre a lot of the time. You might as well play like another Essence Scatter, but I think Exclude's fine. It's really good against Tron and those super long decks. Those ones that want to grind you out a lot. So I think Exclude might be alright there. Also Negate and Dispel. These 2 are optional. Or I mean, you always want to have 1 of these in your deck, but it depends which ones you want. Against Fae, you want like Dispel, because they have bolts, they have counter spells, and that's when Dispel's better. But against decks like Mono Black Control, for example, I think Negate is better, because that can counter stuff like Wrench Mind and Duress and such. So I think Negate is more versatile, but it has its downsides, so it's 1 more. So I think it's really up to you. Echoing Truth is one of them. Is another card that a lot of people like to play. Kalikaz likes to play Echoing Truth a lot because it deals with decks like Bully and a lot of the token decks. And it's also alright against Burn since it deals with Curse. So Echoing Truth is one of those cards that you could try out. I haven't played it yet, so I don't really have an opinion on it, but I think it might be alright if you want to try that out. Disdainful Stroke is kind of like Exclude. You want this card for Tron, just like Exclude, but there's better options than Disdainful Stroke. I would rather play like Essence Scatter over Disdainful Stroke. I would rather play Exclude over Disdainful Stroke, but again, it's preference, up to you. It's just one of those cards that might be alright, but most of the time really isn't. Blue Elemental Blast, this is pretty straightforward. Yeah, if there's Burn, you play it. It's that simple, pretty much. Gorilla Shaman, I actually played this in an old list. I don't know where it is, but I used to play it It was alright. It wasn't that great. But if there's like a lot of affinity, I play it. Usually you want to play a mountain in your sideboard. That's when you play Gorilla Shaman. You bring it in with the mountain, and then you just beat it on affinity. But there's not a lot of affinity lately, and I usually just take that match as a loss. I mean, it's usually closer than regular familiars, but Shaman really helps that matchup. Nature's Chant, I like to play 2. If you go over 2, that's fine. I don't like going under 2 if you're not playing Gorilla Shaman, though. It deals with boggles, it deals with affinity, it deals with a lot of things. So, I think Nature's Chant is a must play in your sideboard. So, those are the cards that you can play a lot of the time. There's a lot of options with this deck, a lot of flex slots. So, I'm going to go over my lists, and I'm going to tell you guys the flex slots and what you can and cannot change. So, this is the most recent list that I won with. I went 8-1. If you want to, I might make replays on that soon, but I'm not sure if I will or not. I probably will, though. So, this is the list I played. 4 Ephemerate, 3 Faithful, 2 Ponder, 4 Preordain, as the 1-drops. Some pretty solid 1-drops. A lot of people some people go 4 Faithful. I think that's fine. A lot of people also like to cut 1 Ephemerate. I like having 4, because drawing multiples is almost never bad. But there are times where it's just stuck in your hand. But I think sometimes you can just use it as like a snap, where you can just like protect your own guy with it, if you have multiples. So I think having multiple Ephemerates or a 4 of isn't not that bad, but I can see why people want to play less than 4. I think you mostly want to go 2 Ephemerate or 4 Ephemerate, depending on your preference. I know Birdman plays 2, and a lot of people do play 2, but again, it's mostly preference. Ephemerate is definitely a flex slot, though. Godfarer's Faithful, you need to play this card, I'm pretty sure, or else you're just going to get stomped by a bunch of the aggro decks or Fae. This card's just a powerhouse in general. It blocks ninjas, it gains life, it does pretty much everything you want a card to do against aggro and the decks like fairies. Cantrip slots, I think cantrips are very flex, depends on if you like them. If you don't, I'm not a huge fan of cantrips, but I do like to have some, so that is indeed another flex slot. 4 familiar, you cannot change this, you have to play 4 familiars. It helps you tempo out, it helps you do pretty much everything you need this deck to do. If you don't play familiar, you're just going to go like turn 1 Faithful, turn 2 hold up counter into cantrips, but with familiar you can go like turn 2 familiar, turn 3 Muldrifter into Ephemerate. That kind of stuff is kind of where you want to be with this deck. So I think you need 4 familiar always. I don't think you need to go over, I don't think you need to go less. I think you just need 4. The counters, I like to have 4 counters in general. Going under 3 counters is kind of risky, but I think 4 is pretty solid. I don't like to go under. I could see going up to 5, but that's also kind of risky. So I think I'm gonna stick with 4 counters. I have 3 snap here. I used to play 4, but I think 3 is pretty solid. I think snap's a flex slot for sure, though. I think you want at least 2, since we play Chancery. So at least 2 snap. Wouldn't go less though. 1 flicker is definitely flex. I use sideboard out sometimes against decks where you don't need to bounce their stuff or log them out. It's pretty bad against faster decks. So I could see kind of like a 1 Ephemerate for a flicker, or cutting 2 Ephemerate for a flicker. That's what some people do, but I like to have 1 with this shell. 4 Seagate, I think is you can't go less than 4. It's just so good with Ephemerate and flicker. Being able to draw a bunch of cards with Seagate Oracle with Ephemerate or just being able to draw a bunch of cards with Arcanist or Seagate and a Flicker is just too good to pass up. 2 Deep Analysis is definitely flex. I used to not play any. You can play some. It's really up to you how much you want, how much actual card draw you want. 3 Mancer. I think 2 or 3 is the pretty solid. Don't really want to go under 2. Don't really want to go over 3, or so you're going to be drawing so many. And sometimes you don't want to draw any in games, but you usually want to draw 1. So that's why I like to play 3. 4 more Drifter. You cannot go under 4. Drifter is just so good in this deck. You can either evoke it for like a divination, or you can make a body with it. And it's also how we win the game 99% of the time. Aether Snipe, as much as I don't like to say it, it's a flex slot, but it's my tech of choice, and I think it's very good a lot of the time. Like I said before, it is just a 4-mana 4/4 that can bounce 3 things. So I used to play 3 of them. You can play 1, you can play 0. It's really up to you. Sideboard. I think the sideboard might need work, but 4 Gut Shot. I like to play 4. Some people like to play none. You either go 4 or you go 0, I think. It's really good against fairies, so if you expect a lot of fairies, play them. But if there's no fairies, don't play any. Blue Elemental Blast. Like I said before, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's good against burn. If you don't expect burn, don't play it. Negate. Also good, but like Dispel. If there's Fae, you can play Dispel. But I like Negate because of the versatility. Exclude, I have recently cut Exclude. But if you expect Tron, play it. If you don't. Stonehorn, good versus aggro. I like to have some of the sideboard. It's always nice to have something for aggro. And it did make game in the top 8 against Boggles. Nature's Chant. I like to have 2 if you're not playing Gorilla Shaman. But if you do play Gorilla Shaman, you might only want 1. Going 0 Chant seems wrong to me. You always want 1, at least. But if there's a lot of Boggles, I might go up to 3 or 4. But it's really depending on what your meta looks like. So those are the flex slots in my recent winning list. So I'm going to play a match, and I will tell you guys the lines and what I'm going to do throughout that match. Alright, so we're going to play a round real quick, and I'm going to talk through my plays and everything. So this hand we have a familiar, counterspell, 2 counterspells, a Seagate and Ephemerate. This hand is definitely queuable, since if we can get this familiar to stick, and if we have this familiar to stick, we can play Seagate, look for lands, and we also have Ephemerate. Looks like they're on a Sanctuary deck. We're going to play Period, so just drew it. So, since they're on a blue deck, we don't really need Stonehorn. I don't think we need this other Ephemerate, since we're really just looking for lands. We found another land, so we're going to play it. So, the plan is here. We're going to hold up a counterspell. Then, next turn, play Familiar, hold up another counterspell. Alright. Is this a mirror match? Oh, looks like it might be a mirror match. So, looks like this is a blue-white Familiar's mirror. So, I'm just going to play out the Familiar now, since they're tapped out. Grab an island. See what they play here. They're going to play Compulsive Research. Fine with that. So, what we're going to do next turn is play Seagate Oracle. If we find an untapped land, we might just Ephemerate at their end of turn. Yeah, this looks like a Familiar's mirror. So, play Seagate. Since we do another Ephemerate, I'm feeling pretty good now. I don't think we need this other Familiar since everything's already cost reducted enough. So we're just going to take the Deep Analysis. We're going to play a Civil Knot, let's get an island. And we're going to pass turn. So we're just going to counter pretty much any creature they play. or familiar if they do end up playing one. Will Drifter evoke? Sure. I'm guessing they're digging for lands. Okay. Oh, okay. They have Mortuary Mire. So I'm gonna get Drifter. Yep. We're gonna Ephemerate here. We're gonna take the Cove, since we don't need Stonehorn in this matchup. Have the discard here. Discard a Flicker. We're gonna take the Island here. We don't need the other Deep Analysis, so we're gonna cast Deep Analysis here. Draw some cards. Draw a bunch of good ones here. I'm not gonna recast Deep Analysis here because we have we need to hold up double counter here, and we could just hold up one counter and basically land cycle, but okay, they're going for Compulsive. So since we're playing Compulsive and Moon Drifter, this makes you think that they're on Birdman's list. So it kind of suck if we're on a mirror here. Alright, so they're on up 2 mana, so they definitely have a counter spell here. Basic land cycle, get another island. I think we do win this mirror though, since we have so much value. Okay, so I think we're going to play this familiar. I'm fine if they want to counter it. Actually, do we fight over this? We can if we want to. And hold up as in scatter. I think I like fighting over this familiar. Okay, so that sticks. We're going to evoke the Drifter and Ephemerate it. Draw some cards. Ephemerate. Draw some more cards and pass turn. Get it for 1. So, I don't know if you guys realized, but we do not win this game with combo, and we win this game with damage. So, we have to get there. See if they have another counter spell. See what they play here. Play Seagate. It's not the Seagate Oracle. So, our plan next turn, I think, is hopefully we just draw Archaeomancer and then lock them out of the game. That's the plan here. We are almost halfway through our deck though, so see what we draw. Draw a counterspell, snap, and another Ephemerate. Alright, I like where this is going. I'm going to play the island. We're going to start off a Preordain. Dig for the Archaeomancer. We do not need these lands. We could Deep Analysis here, or we could Flicker. A lot of options we could do. We could also just Ephemerate. I think I like it. Oh no, we can't attack. So I think we're just going to Ephemerate. Draw some cards. Okay. We're gonna lead off a Preordain. Draw a Drifter and Faithful. I'm going to top. Probably didn't need the Faithful, but I'm just gonna do this. Evoke, Flicker it. Yeah, maybe that was a punt, keeping the Faithful. Alright, so it looks like we're not going to find that Mancer that we're looking for, but that's fine. We're just going to pass here, discard some lands. They play another Familiar. We're going to counterspell that Familiar. it looks like they scooped it up. Alright. So we got so much value there that they just couldn't win. So we're going to bring in negates here, since that counters flicker and all their other counter spells. And we might bring in Sage's Row here, since it's pretty much all about comboing. I don't think we need Sage's Row, actually. We can probably just outvalue them without it. We're going to cut Stone Horns, since they are pretty bad here. We can cut a Snap, I think. Yeah, we'll cut a Snap. I'm not sure if we want Faithful. We don't really want Faithful. So, not sure if it's worth bringing in Sage's Row just for that. That's fine. We'll just run it back. Maybe we keep a Snap instead of a Faithful. I'm not sure. This hand is almost keepable, but since it's the only one land, we are not going to keep it. This hand is keepable. We're just going to bomb the Archaeomancer and hope that we draw something good. Oh, they mowed a 5. Looks. So this familiar can, if this familiar can stick, and we draw a land, we are pretty much just going to win this. It looks like. Turn 1 island. No cantrip. Okay, so we drew that land. We're gonna play our plains. Okay, the cantrip. So it looks like our familiar is going to resolve. Okay, they play a Chancery. I'm gonna play our familiar. Hopefully they just play their own familiar and don't hold up a counter. Okay, there's a familiar. Okay, so they're gonna pass. Going to snap it. Okay. Untap, player, Muldrifter. Draw some cards. Ephemerate. And hope that they don't play the spell. And they scooped it up. Okay. So, that was a match. Alright, so that was the game that I showed you with this list right here that I was playing. Almost the exact same as my winning list, except I played 2 Stonehorn. And yeah, so I'm gonna end up playing this for the next Tropical Pauper Saturdays, see if I can keep the top 8 streak alive. And yeah, so if you guys have any questions with the deck, you can let me know, and I'll try to answer every question, or I should be able to answer every question that you guys have. Will most likely be making another video on my replays of the win, and I can go more in depth of the gameplay there. But this video is mostly just for what cards you can play, what you shouldn't play, and yeah, this is mostly just deck building. But if you guys have any questions, let me know, and I will try my best to answer it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you guys later.